All right, we're in.
All right, well, welcome everybody to Beyond the Court. And I think the producer, Scotty Mack, he did not tell Ellie and I if it's episode 1 or court 1.
Episode
or
1.
Episode 1. Thank you, Scotty. So welcome to Sudsy and Elli Beyond the Court with Scotty Mack. Ellie, Scott, always awesome to see you guys. We have a really awesome, exciting show coming up tonight. And I'll get into that. So, tonight's guest is none other than Tim Sweeney. And, Ellie, you and I, of course, have history with Tim Sweeney. And just a real quick recap of who Tim Sweeney is for most that don't know. He is a 4-time national collegiate champion. Is that correct, Ellie?
That's correct. As the number 1 player.
As the number, right. So that's the highest level of the national champion as a college player. He's a Pan American gold medalist. Thank you, Tim Sweeney. He is a USA national doubles champion. He is also the USA national singles champion. And Ellie will touch on this later. He's also won an IRT Pro Stop. And he's an IRT champion of a Pro Stop, which Ellie brought something up before, and he's going to get into that, later on when we have Sweens here. But before we get going, this is my little monologue that we just started. And, I just want to say that you're going to meet Tim Sweeney tonight. And Tim Sweeney, what he did in college, back in the day, if you didn't see that SMSU series, you need to go watch it. It was similar to The Last Dance, kind of the production, the way it went, the way they put it together. And it was really interesting and really a lot of history there. So racquetball was huge back in the day. John Ellis got offered and did go to school on a full college scholarship. I had an offer that I did not accept. And we're not there today. Racquetball today in the United States really doesn't have those options available to junior players. And for me and Ellie, and Scott too, obviously, we're embracing the fact that we need to discuss our history of racquetball. We're in a tough time. COVID's really kicked our asses and put us in a position that we need to do everything we can. And Ellie and I and Scotty are doing everything we can to keep racquetball out there, keep it energized. And it's important for us that you meet people like Tim Sweeney and you see who Tim Sweeney is and where he came from and the history of our sport, because we want you to know. Because if you know what happened then, you kind of know where we are today, and it will only help us go to where we want to be in the future. So we're super excited about that. Scotty Mack, you mentioned it earlier. You said, you really didn't know who Tim Sweeney was, but we're going to bring you back in a minute. You're going to go behind the scenes now, get this done. Can you bring Tim Sweeney in here for us? To most, we call him Sweens. So
Totally.
let's get
all right.
Sweens in.
Have
There
a
he
good
is.
show. I'm excited to see how this goes. I'm going to back off here for a bit.
We'll see you soon. Scotty.
Sure.
So Tim Sweeney is with us, everybody. Sweens, I don't know if you heard, I was just basically telling everybody of your legendary status in the sport. And, you and I are good friends, and Ellie, and we have a long history. But there's so many things I don't know about you. There's so many things I love about you. And there's things I guess I was just too young and I never asked. So I'm going to start right now with the first question. And Sweens, you really influenced a lot of people. I was speaking today to the executive director of USA Racquetball, Mike Waddell. And he said that you specifically inspired him to continue to play because you used to go to his club at the event, the Top Gun tournament, and he watched you play. Ellie and I offline have said, and now we're going to say it publicly, that Tim Sweeney with a racket in his hand is one of the greatest racquetball players in the history of the game. And we're not just going to, kind of say greatest ever. We're going to say you're in the top 10 of the greatest we've ever seen with a racket in his hand. So I'm going to ask you, why the hell did you leave? Where did you go? You were and could have been one of the best. You were at that moment one of the best players on the planet, arguably the best. Why did you leave the sport?
So that's what you're going to start off with?
I'm coming at you with a bang, Sweens.
No, how you doing?
No need.
Yeah. Well, and I know we're probably going to touch on the SMS thing, and I think that kind of gives a real snapshot of, and I'll make everybody watch it, kind of the final episode where I was kind of talking about this, and the reporter asked me kind of the same question, and the way I answered, I just kind of left, and you could hear it in my voice because that's kind of the way it happened. Where, I was competing. I really loved getting into the SMS piece with Elli coming in, and just our team. We had so many players. We just pushed each other. So we were tour ready, and I think you could see that in a lot of the players. It's just basically, of course, with Elli and his talent, he didn't need to bake for 4 years. He can jump right on the tour and play and compete. And that was kind of a second part of the story. I mean, let's talk about the feeding ground to the pro tour and stuff like that. So the question you asked me, and I'm probably going to take a couple left turns, is, I left just because it was real rough when my dad passed away. And I know Elli and Sudsy, you guys were all there. My game probably took a ding, I think, for a little bit. I remember one time at Olympic Festival, and I was kind of struggling with my backhand, and Sudsy jumps on the court, and he's like, "What's up, dude?" He goes, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I'm like, I'm struggling getting, and so who's better to talk about a backhand shot when you're struggling than Sudsy? So, and I don't know if he charged back then $50 an hour. I'm not sure.
I don't remember this. This is great.
We were in St. Louis, and
Okay.
I was kind of, my game was a little choppy and a little mentally banged up a little bit, and trying to get back into it. And then when that happens, sometimes your feet don't follow, and a lot of things go along with that. And he gave me a couple tips, and I really, honestly, it comes down to the fundamentals, kids. I was stepping more towards the side wall and not stepping towards the front wall, so I was kind of shutting down my hips, and I'm trying to pull the ball across court, but I was so late on it with my contact, and little things go a long way. And again, kind of off the subject of why I left.
Yeah. Stop dodging the question. Why did you leave racquetball? You could have been the best player in the world.
At the end of the day, and I'll be honest and I'll be frank because I have nothing to hide. I was a little disappointed where racquetball was going, is from an earning potential. I lost my dad. I wanted to make sure my mom was taken care of to the best of her ability. She was independent, she was working, but that was a big black eye for me. And then when the contracts really weren't there, I was getting paid a pretty good amount of money, and I consider myself, like you guys would say, one of the better players in the game. And the what if, I mean, because I never really spent a full year on the tour, and the contracts weren't there. And a lot of times, we leverage our private sponsors. We kind of talk to those guys off the court, and that's always nice to have, but it's not always on them to support our sport. I expect the racquetball manufacturers, I expect some of the other anybody that makes something for racquetball to support the players, because that's where the growth is going to be. Besides the juniors, is growing the sport by playing it at the highest level. And it just wasn't there. And I had the opportunity to get a job, and I did. And it wasn't like who would blink first, because it's sad that the story ends with the sport lost a pretty good up and coming player because the money wasn't there. And that's, at some point, we got to make money, right? And I had to start sooner than later. And I felt I was happy that I had an education. That was always a goal of mine, is get through college. I achieved that. And I'm real happy with that. So at that point, I figured I'm going to put the diploma to work, and I did. So, and I definitely questioned. I would have liked to have a nice gap, about 5 years, just to kind of beat the ball around and see what happened, and it didn't happen. So it's kind of a sad story, and that's kind of why I answered it like that. I just left.
Yeah, I mean, it is a sad story, Tim, because at that point, I think there was so much opportunity to play in just great matches with people that you were friendly with, but yet the competition was just going to get really insane on the tour at that time. You had a lot of juniors that were coming up a little younger than you, but then a guy like you who's now on the tour playing great racquetball, already super accomplished. So yeah, it's unique, and players today are still dealing with this. You got guys who are leaving a little early before they even reach their prime because of the money situation. So it's a topic that's going to come up over and over again on Beyond the Court here, and we'll be touching on. But I want to get into some of the early years, because like Sud said, I've got a lot of questions for you as well. Stuff we didn't talk about at Newhall there at SMS in Springfield, Missouri. We got around each other early on, and you were our leader, you were our captain, and we just really had a lot of good times and got into it right away, into having fun and competing hard, and that was great. But I want to know, how did you get started in racquetball? Who put you on the court first? How'd you get started? Your early inspiration. So talk a little bit about that.
It's kind of a great story, because I was at a real perfect age in my life where I was trying to find what I really wanted to do. I was in high school, more or less, playing tons of hockey. My brother was our goalie. He was a real good hockey player. We had a nice high school hockey team, and I wrestled too. And it was kind of a wrestling powerhouse that when you went to Glenbard North, if you wrestled, you stayed with that team, and I felt bad because I got a job at a racquetball club that most people in Chicago have been there, called Killshot, Bloomingdale Sports Complex. When I started, it was called Killshot, just a phenomenal grassroots racquetball club. I got a job there. I was working at the restaurant next door that many people have eaten at, and my brother was the cook. I was a busboy, and I was trying to save up money for a car like everybody was. I was 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. And then I got a job at Killshot, cleaning, the whirlpool and the showers, washing the courts. So I had 2 jobs just to make money, and spitting in a cup, trying to lose weight for wrestling, playing hockey. And I see, back then, the big Seamco 600 inflatable cans on the roof. We had a big tournament. It was awesome. The energy was great in the club. I remember running my butt off, cleaning everything up, trying to get towels going. And I forget who won it. I probably should know this. And it probably would be about 1982, maybe, or 83. Whoever won the tournament at Killshot, they're holding up the big check, and I forget what the dollar amount was. And I'm like, you can win money, and I'm spitting in a cup. I'm like, this looks like a fun sport too. So I swear I just picked it up. Me and my brother and my friends, we started beating the ball around. And then I got good pretty quick, started beating a lot of the people around me. And Killshot was awesome because they had 2 outdoor courts. So when I was younger, before it got dark out and it was like a Saturday or Sunday, I'd go hit the ball for like an hour and a half, and nobody would be out there. I just me. And back then there was no Walkman, so there was nothing. So just me hitting the ball, and that really helped me out a lot, just by hitting balls, just picking up the speed. And then obviously I just started playing, and I got good pretty quick. And I'm happy to say I won that. So I probably started in 1982 or 83. I won the 87 Illinois State Championship. So that kind of put me on the map. I played, I think I played Kelvin Van Treese in the finals. And then I went on to make the U.S. team a year later. So in short order, I won.
So what was your first year on the U.S. team?
88.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wild.
So
yeah, I didn't know that.
Wild.
I didn't know that. Did you know that, Ellie?
No, and I did know that he was on the team earlier there, and I know you guys went to Houston for the Pan Pacific, or not Houston, Hawaii, excuse me, for the Pacific Rim games or something like that. I thought I remember seeing your photo in there.
That's 92. So in 88 was the games in Costa Rica and Hamburg World Championships. I didn't go to the Hamburg World Championships in 88. I was, and we could probably talk about it too, because I'm the funny story. I was the Egan incident in Houston.
Okay.
So when Egan got disqualified, he was playing me next. So that was in 88, 87. So I won the state championships in 87. I go down to Houston. Nobody knows me. And, I can hide. I'm 5'8". I can kind of just duck around. Nobody will see me. Kind of come in there and sneak up on people.
6'2" with the afro.
Like a bobcat.
Yeah, like a bobcat. So I come in there and I'd love to see the draw. I think, and then I was supposed to play Egan in the 16s, I think. And then he got in the fight because he's Egan's a tough guy.
Yeah,
and then
he can handle himself. He's all right.
Yeah, I imagine he probably won.
Sweens, wait, I want to ask you this. So you were playing on an outdoor court, you were hitting, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of people that don't know, one of the things you were known for, besides the wit and sarcasm, which they don't know you well, is your power, right? So like the power and the way you would hit the ball. And, God, I saw you and Ellie play a match where those missiles were moving around and it was inspiring. So when you played on that outdoor court, this is just something separate. Did you go further back than 40 feet, or was it 40, or like, were there lines? Like, could you only go a certain distance, or would you go way back?
Well, of course, these courts, they were awesome. They were full length and full 3 walls. They were phenomenal with only a short ceiling. So only a quarter ceiling. So like anything, when you're ever playing out there, you start banging them and then you start moving all the way back. And of course you got to figure out as far back as you can go. If you can
so you did that.
Yeah. So you do that. And it was good to do, I think, especially if you go about 50 feet, especially if there's no wind. I think it's a good way to kind of just, stretch the arm and get the feel for that. And if you have to raise your target area, if you're skipping the ball, that might help you in that situation. So yeah, we did that. I don't know what the deepest was, but I'm sure we had some fun doing it. But yeah, these are great courts. And it was a great resource too when the club was closed.
Back to 88, Sweens, because that's a good story you were still on right there. The long walls at Bloomingfield, I recall the club. We played a couple stops there. It was cool, very cool
Bloomfield
location. But you know, it's amazing. You're talking about being down at the national championships in Houston, which at that time the draws were just enormous too. Yeah. And it's 88. You're literally 6 years into playing the sport, and you are one of the best players at Houston. So that's right there is just totally amazing to me, because, you know, I mean, starting at 14, 15 and then getting there that quickly is just remarkable talent, obviously. So tell us a little bit more. Egan gets kicked out. I know Ensign and Egan get into a little situation there. He gets kicked out. You move on.
Elli, real quick, before you go, Sweens, I'm sorry. Elli, just tell everybody that's watching that doesn't know Houston, just kind of define what Houston was like, that draw sheet, the players at that time.
Our national championship, you know, I started going to it around 88 myself. So maybe 89 or 90. So I might've missed that first one that you were at, Sweens, but you know, you were definitely somebody that I was watching before I got to Southwest Missouri State. And I was certainly there in 91, just blown away by your talent and how the level you played. But that was our national championships at the downtown YMCA. We had the Hyatt Regency just 2 blocks away that had 50, I mean, had a lot of floors, 30 some floors. It was awesome hotel. Craziness went down there. If you were winning, you were focused and staying out of the crazy. If you were losing,
what about the competition?
Jumping in the crazy. The competition was a who's who. It was everybody who was on the pro tour minus 1 or 2 players. Maybe a Cliff Swain wasn't into that at that time. I know he played one time, but so it was basically a pro stop. And at the time, racquetball hadn't become the powerhouse in Mexico and other countries yet. So it was, you know, it was really the tops of racquetball getting together every year for this huge event that qualified you for the U.S. national team. And to succeed at that event and play on the main level and not have to go down to the dungeon courts was really special. And it would draw anywhere from 800 to 1,000 players. So,
yeah. And talking about main floor courts, they were lightning fast. So I think Cliff would have done well on those courts too. So yeah, going back to 88, you know, and honestly, God, shame on me. The details are kind of rough, but I think he forfeited me in the 16s. I could be wrong. So I beat somebody in the quarters. I honestly don't remember. I played Casio in the semis, and this is a tribute to Houston. And again, like Elli says, you took 2 main draw sheets and you put them together to make one draw. Think about that, everybody.
Over 128 people, 100 over 100 players.
Just ridiculous amount of players. So, so when I played Jim, I won the first game pretty good. I think I beat him like 15-5 in the semis. And in doing so, because I played so many matches, even though I got a forfeit, I don't want to hear it. I ripped open a blister on my hand that I'd always get. Like I think most of it, I'd hold it low. Yeah. So it ripped open a little bit, and then by the second game, it was bleeding everywhere. I'm changing gloves, and there was a doctor somewhere that taped my hand up, but it wasn't the same. So I kind of gripped the racket as best as I could. I really think I couldn't hit a forehand. I think the backhand was okay. I can kind of bury that. And then he beat me the second game, and I think I lost 11-9 or 11-10 breaker to go into the finals. And that year, Andy Roberts, I'm pretty sure, beat Casio in the finals, and Andy was just dominant that year. And but it was. And I made the U.S. team, and I was so excited about it. It was amazing, and just kind of thrust into, wow. I mean, we all set goals. You go out to tournaments, you set goals. Coming off the Illinois State Championship, there's no way I thought I was going to make the U.S. team a year later.
Yeah,
no way.
Crazy.
That's awesome. Good, but no, never thought of that.
Well, there's a friend of yours in the chat room, Cheryl Godinez, and
hey,
she's basically says you're her favorite and the best. And I don't know what this means. She just wrote the Fiero ! So Sweens, I know Elli's going to touch a lot on the amateur stuff, and you know, we could sit here for hours and hours, but I want to ask you too. So tell me a little bit about your experience on the pro tour. I will say thank you once again, because one of the biggest wins, in my opinion, was when you beat Cliff Swain in your hometown. And thank you, because that year I finished #1. So that was a huge match, because I think that was the round of 16s. And, you know, Cliff losing in the 16s at that time would be the equivalent to Kane today losing in the 16s.
That was the 32s. That was the 32s.
Okay, so then it would be equivalent to Kane losing in the 16s. So, you know, Sweens, talk a little bit about your experience on the Pro Tour. I know you won a pro event. Where was that? And, you know, what was that like?
and specifically that tournament too. I won a pro event in Chicago, and this obviously I play well in Chicago, my home court, Dave Negretti's club, which is to me one of the best pure racquetball clubs in the U.S. because
We concur.
it's got
Number
everything.
one.
It's got I don't want to. It's got fast courts, bars, parties, just the best. It's what racquetball is. Doug Ganem, the best tournament, the best of everything. Dave Negretti, the best, racquetball guy. But anyway, so that tournament was kind of funny when that happened. Not kind of funny, but Cliff and I are friends. Cliff's a phenomenal guy. I think I picked him up at the airport, and then we were going to go out to eat. So that tournament. Now I was kind of floundering because I was ending up in certain spots. I was in college, and I know people are like, hey, you kind of want to keep. There's always certain people, especially with your game style. You want to kind of keep an eye on the draw to find out where they are, whether they're good, they're playing well, and also your game style. Like, where's so and so? And I think people want to kind of know where I was going to end up, and I was kind of in that 1 through 8 area. So anyway, so I picked up Cliff. We're going to get something to eat. I think he took a shower, and I called the club, talked to Negretz. The draws were out, and he's like, "Hey, do you hear you play first round?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "You played Cliff," and I'm like, "Oh." So I'm like, and on the phone, I'm like, I go, "Cliff, we play each other first round." And he's like, "Oh." And then all of a sudden he's like, "I think I'm not hungry." I'm like, "Yeah, I think I got to go." Yeah, I think we both went and stretched out and started getting ready.
That's a great point, Sweens, because today we see a lot of differences, and we'll get into it because I don't know if you pay much attention to today's Pro Tour, but I was telling my wife today, Veronica and Ellie, I know you were there too. I said, we've watched Cliff play hundreds of times, and there's only 2 people, maybe 3, that I've ever seen Cliff Swain feel you could noticeably see he wasn't comfortable. He wasn't himself. He was he felt not right. And that was that match against you, Sweens. When I watched that, he felt like this was no fun. This wasn't enjoyable. So again, thank you for that, because for those that don't know, that was the first year that I finished number 1. And quite frankly, even though that was in October, had Sweens not beat Cliff Swain in the round of 32s, I probably wouldn't have finished number 1, because a little history lesson, I only finished number 1 by 10 points that year. So thank you, Sweens.
You got it. I'm going to go check my mailbox, see if there's anything.
Royalties.
I've been sending it monthly for years. You haven't gotten it?
Oh.
Go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, that was, we were all there, that was October following our 1995 Pan Am win. So, we were kind of still feeling that connection with each other in that moment. Sweens, that was such a great moment for you. You won a big round of 32 match. We all watched. I went into my 32s at the same time slot saying, I want to get this done. I want to go see what's going on with that match, because I just thought there could be a potential situation there. And it was on the main court there, and you just played phenomenal racquetball. And it was a tough match, and there was a lot going on for you there. The passing of your father, and there was a lot of emotions built up in that tournament. And we ended up playing in the quarters there, and it helped me a lot, obviously, too, having so many losses to Cliff. But my match with you there was. It felt like, you were maybe getting a little tired at that point. And it was just, I was really emotional for you, because I knew you had gone through a lot over the last 6 months to a year, and with being at school and graduating and all that. So, but I'm really curious about the Pro Stop win. That it's amazing, because you don't see many players over the history of the game that are not playing the tour full time, who win a Pro Stop. And so talk about a little bit about the year you won the Pro Stop and the event itself.
The one thing I'll say about when I won the Pro Stop, and I can really kind of narrow it down, because you have to look at, evaluate yourself, like your year over year. How am I doing? No matter what you're doing, playing professionally, your job. So if I look back at that, I was starting to play pretty good. I really felt that I never feared. I don't think anybody on this call, anybody that plays the game, once you close the door behind you, you better not fear anybody. You can beat anybody at a given time. And I always felt that, and I actually felt that I could have even done a little bit better than that. And in doing so, I think a lot of structure. I didn't have a lot of structure when I played racquetball. I did what we normally did when you play racquetball. So you meet up with your buddies and you play. I play with Nooms. I play with Plazak. I play with a lot of guys in Chicago, Negretz, Eugene, and you just have great. And you kind of don't do anything else like structure. I didn't. Eugene would help me out a lot with personal training. But anyway, so if I look back, and when I won the Pro Stop, that was like my freshman year of college. That's when we had a lot more structure from our team. So we had days that we had to hit. We drilled a little bit, and this was the year before Ellie got there. And then we do a lot of running, though. We did a lot of stairs. We did a lot of, and I think that really helped me out. It kind of just not only helped me out, it put me in such a level of fitness that the racquetball became secondary. The footwork, everything was there. We did a ton of footwork drills, and everybody that when you skip a ball, you're tired. It's not that you choked. You might try to do something different, raise your target area, but when you're skipping the ball, it's because you're not moving your feet. And a lot of times when you have that level of fitness where it's second nature, then you start rolling the ball a lot more. You don't even have to think. And then you can just, take a little bit off and splat in certain situations. So I think that helped me win the pro stops. I went up to Chicago, and I like the draw that I had. Everything's about matchups and everything we do in sports. You look at that, and then things happen. So just like Ellie said, I'm sure that he was so happy when Cliff got taken out. Of course, no matter what, he doesn't care who he's playing. He was glad Cliff was gone, so the matchups were very favorable. I lost to Ruben the year before, and I really I learned a lot from playing Ruben that year in the semis. And I think I pushed him to 5, and he just battled. And he might have won the tournament. So the next year, I think I played him in the semis again, and I got him back. And I was real happy to do so. And I was in my level of I thought my level of game was much better than the year before. And I played Egan in the finals. And when I'm excited and I'm at home in Chicago, I knew there's no way I was going to lose, especially playing Egan. I feel I can battle with him, and especially on my home court. Egan hits probably the ball harder than anybody, so you just don't want him to get on a roll. But I really felt I could keep him on the defense, and I did. So I played really good. A couple times I played Egan. I played him in the finals of Houston, and I beat him pretty good. And
oh my God,
I beat him in 4 in Chicago, and I feel bad because he's such a great player that but sometimes, and
you don't feel bad.
No, and sometimes when you get to the finals, there's another gear. It's like you're at a par 5. You hit the ball a little bit further to get there in 2. There's another gear when you get in the finals, and when you have that opportunity, you're never going to let it slip away. And I haven't had as many as you, but the few times I did, I made sure that I would not lose.
Well, those 2 times for sure. And, there's a lot of footage. Well, I don't know if there's a lot. There's footage out there of your pro stop win. You're wearing the white shorts, are really short at the time, that haven't gotten down to the long shorts yet. The green shirt, Echelon shirt. And if you watch those, you're moving so great at that moment, and you're diving around, making just crazy gets, and you can see your energy level after the rallies, in between the rallies, the confidence. And I noticed these little quirks about you that I've seen while watching you and playing against you, that when you're feeling good, you have this little different, straightness to your back and way about you.
There's a bounce in his step that we got to share together. And Ellie, I'm going to let you get to the Pan Am part, but Sweens, I'm going to ask you too, because there's a lot of players, that are watching or don't know, or they're going to watch this. One thing that you taught me a lot of things in the short time we were able to share together, as racquetball, partners, as doubles partners and friends, but you were a huge biker. And, you used to bike a ton. And I asked you one time, I'm like, hey, so what's up with the biking? Talk about your biking, and talk about, back in the day when you were what I, again, and Ellie consider as to be one of the greatest players on the planet at that moment. Like, what was up with the biking?
I'm not going to glance past that too. That's the second time you said that. And I appreciate that from a guy named Sudsy and Elli, for you guys to say that. I do appreciate that, to be able to say that I was one of the better players. That's truly a
well, we're not saying that because you're here, bro. We're saying that because we believe that. We talk about, and you're a big, huge sports fan too. And, people talk about GOATs and who's the best ever and why. And, Ellie and I talk a lot offline, and for people that don't know, we're talking to Tim Sweeney, who, yeah, he's a friend, but we don't say this to everybody. There's people that are decorated, or there's people that, with long periods of time, and there's different ways to describe that. But the way Ellie and I define it is, put a racket in somebody's hand, and they're going to play the best possible racquetball match they can. Who's the best you've ever seen play? And it's not one time, because we've seen you do it multiple times. It's just maybe you didn't choose to do it at the level where everybody that's watching can see it. So, we say that in all sincerity and honesty.
And getting to your question, I think
the biking.
Yeah, for the cycling piece of it, I used to, me and my buddy Eugene in Chicago, we used to do some sprint triathlons in the off season, usually in the summers when I came home from school, and I had a cycling bike. I liked doing the triathlons for the cycling. I hated the running, hated the swimming. I'm not gonna lie, didn't like the pounding. More of a kind of a fast twitch guy. Didn't like the long term running. My wife's a big runner, so cycling for me is always something that's been great. And most of the reason I have the power I had on my serve is because of my legs and my hips. And matter of fact, when I saw some of the highlights from SMS, I thought I was standing, my hips were too high. I thought I could have got more power if I was lower to the ground a little bit to explode. But I've always been a pretty good cycler, and I think I've always had good sized quads, and I enjoy it. And I used to do it a ton. I did it in college too, when I was down there with Ellie, and just go out alone, and Buzz and Simon Wan, some of the other guys used to cycle. And during this COVID stuff, I got back into it. I jumped on my mountain bike and I rode about 200 plus miles and this downtime, and try to get back into shape. And I think it's great for racquetball because the leg strength, and it really focuses on your quads and your hips. And that's huge for us in racquetball. That's why you see a lot of hip injuries. You see a lot because there's so much focus on that. But if you really strengthen that pocket of that hip, I think from cycling, and I think honestly, I don't have a lot of issues with my health because of racquetball. Part of it's because I think I ducked out a little bit early. Always had some shoulder pain, but I don't have any hip and knee. I tore my Achilles playing squash, so I'm real happy with my hips right now. That sounds weird.
Yeah, that sounds that's funny.
I have good hips.
On the same note, Swing, since you brought up Suds brought up the cycling, I'll bring up the hockey, because one of the things, with two of the greats of all time with Kane and Cliff, they have that in common where they're hockey players first, but that's also your situation as well. And most notably, and I'll mention this now, your son looks like he is going to be an awesome hockey player and potentially, do a lot in the sport. So first two-part question, what correlation to your power, to your game does hockey bring into the equation? And also talk a little bit about your son and his aspirations.
And 100%, I appreciate that. Yeah, my son's a pretty solid hockey player, and he's fun to watch, and got a lot more skill than what I was. I think every sport nowadays, there's so much more skill in it because of the level of training and everything. Every sport where you see the kids are so much better, and it's fun to watch. And I think hockey, again, if you look at how you push off and the diagonal of the kinesiology of the muscles, it comes down to your quads, it comes down to your hamstrings, a little bit of your glutes, of course. And obviously, look at the two guys you mentioned. Even though they hit on the wrong side of the ball, those weird lefties, they hit BBs because of their legs. I mean, they're getting their power from their legs. Of course, they've got some shoulders. Well, maybe not Cliff.
He's got hips.
He is great in those areas.
Say the least.
So I think that's a big piece of it, and it's really important. I coach hockey to skate with your knees bent. You get lower to the ice, and you really can generate more power, and nobody can bump you off the puck. And I think, again, it's just inherent. It's just, when you're really pushing off. And the funny thing is, I'm a golfer now, and I don't hit the ball as far as I thought I would have because of my racquetball.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Gannon makes fun of me. Those guys make fun of me, and it's deservedly so. Those guys are bombing the ball, and I'm keeping up with them, and I'm not past them.
That shocks me, actually. Sweens, do you watch much racquetball today? Do you see any racquetball today?
I do. I watch as much as I can. The social network and Facebook is probably the best feed for me to get that. I enjoy that. It's fun to watch. The skill level's great. I love that. God, I'm so sorry. I love that guy out of Bolivia.
Tell us what you see. Conrado Moscoso, that's who you're talking about.
I love Kane, of course.
Tell us what you see. What are the differences that jump out at you today to when we played and even before that? What are some of the differences?
God, you know what? That's a great question. I think the biggest difference from when I played, and I think the game evolved to a certain situation. When I watch you guys, even like you and Ellie, so when I was kind of like, getting out of it a little bit, a lot of times I would probably dive and put the ball back in play. And I think you guys got better at lunging and shooting the ball. Whether you were facing the front wall so you're not squared up taking your shot, where I would be much more defensive. And sometimes maybe you hit a bow stick in a very defensive situation, try to end the rally, because if you dove, you're down and out of the rally anyway. I thought you guys in the front court you really made use of your hands, and you had quicker jabs. Instead of us trying to take a full swing, you guys would have your quicker here to here. And that was something that you had to pick up on. I think Ellie had a really nice jab, just a quick little jab down the line. You didn't have to, everybody loves the splat. Everybody loves to wind up and hit a shot. But all you got to do is end the rally, right? So at style points, you don't need them. And I think a lot of times you guys shorten your swings, and Kane's hands are ridiculous up front. So, you got to be careful. If you're going to pass him, you better pass him. Otherwise, you're kind of dead to rights. So I think that's the biggest thing. The level of play is just phenomenal. I think the footwork's like anything, probably a little bit faster, of course. I think you guys cover the court better, probably less diving. And It's so skilled. It's fun to watch. And I hope I want everybody to watch as much as possible. It'll never leave me.
It's an interesting attitude you take towards that, because this is an area that sometimes Sudsy and I don't totally see eye to eye. Although, he's kind of brought me to his side just a little bit more over this last, during COVID, really, and talking racquetball, and that's, giving the full credit to players evolving and getting better, like you're saying there, and things get better with training and as years go on, and I see some of the same things you do, but then again, we don't have as many United States of America players competing on the Pro Tour and Scotland International more. So, sometimes it's maybe not thought of as high level as we had in the mid 90s to late 90s, and even a little bit before that. What I'm just curious, I'm a little surprised at the same time that you kind of explained it like that you believe that everything's evolving and getting better.
Maybe he's being nice and political. Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
it's possible, but
maybe you have to ask him a more clear question,
I'm not sure what my question's getting to, other than, I just find it really interesting that that's the stance you took on it. And it's kind of, I'm going to go a sideways direction, because I don't want to miss this opportunity. And that's, Houston 91. It's after your first year, you win the Collegiate Nationals for the first time, and you go to Houston and you win this event. We've already talked a little bit about this, but you mentioned Egan as an opponent. Was that your semis or finals?
That was my final when I won Houston. That was
when you won Houston in 91, because at that time you were on a level. You had won a pro stop, you had won the collegiates, and now you were the clear-cut favorite at Houston. And in my opinion, that was my second year there, and everyone going into tournaments, Tim Sweeney is going to win this event. And I'm thinking, well, Tim Doyle's won a couple times here, and he's really good. Right, twice in a row. Right. And so, I was one saying, well, wait a minute, what about Tim Doyle? But then I thought you played Doyle at some point, semis or finals, and I watched it. And I thought that your serving and your explosion was just another level above his that day. So talk about, what your game strategy was going into those courts at Houston and into that 91 event.
Yeah, the year before that. And like everything's not puppy dogs and ice cream. So after 88,
at least you said it.
Story's great. So 89, I come back, and I think Doyle took me out in the quarters. So, I'm off the U.S. team in an instant. So here I am. Everything's great. Yeah. And all of a sudden I got to go back to start drinking Miller Lite. I'm on the, I got bumps. So it might not have been him in 89. And I swear I've got a bad racquetball memory. I kind of just remember so getting back to your question. So in 91, I was geared up to win that tournament. That was everything. I wrote it everywhere on my notebooks in college that I'm going to win Houston. So that goal was set way early, and that was huge for me. I was going to take advantage of it. I saw my draw, and I liked it. I liked everything about it, of course, and obviously wanted to execute that. And I did. I played Tim Doyle, and I knew he beat me the year before, I'm pretty sure. And I knew what I had to do, and he was playing great. Timmy's such a good player, and it was fun to play because you stand there in between the red lines and just say, okay, who's going to outsmart, who's going to out hit, and then shake hands at the end and go get a beer and at the bar, 100%. And I think I beat him 2 straight. I'm not positive.
You did. I think you did as well. If not, he snuck one in there, and then the breaker was quick.
Yeah, it was definitely one side. So at that point when I beat Tim and he was going for a 3-peat, which would have been unprecedented down there in Houston. And then I don't know if that was my semi, and then I played Egan in the finals. I think Tim was my semi. I really don't know, and I'm not trying to be that guy. I don't remember.
I think so. I think it was.
And then once I got in the final, like I said, that was one that there's no way I was going to lose it. It didn't matter. There's no way, and I was lucky enough to execute and win. It was just such a great feeling.
Yeah, and you were the dominant player there, and so the summertime comes, things happen. Talk a little bit, I guess, about that interim from Houston to when you get back to Southwest Missouri State.
So not too much after that. So the following year, going into my sophomore year, I went out to California and played in that pro stop to kind of see where I was against everybody else. That's when Cliff was coming back from tennis, and he was starting to play pretty good. And it was one of those tournaments too. Like my first round, I stunk. I struggled. I forget who I played first round. I think I won in 4. and and me and Nooms were talking. He's like, just hang in there. You struggle. Don't worry about it. Like racquetball, right? So I feel sorry for Nooms. I played him 2 rounds later and I beat him. And then I went on to beat, I think, Dave Johnson. I think I beat Doyle in the semis there. And then I played Cliff in the finals in '92 in LA. And that was that's the YouTube video. Everybody sees me not, diving, which means I wasn't moving my feet, just giving Cliff a bunch of plums, and he's laughing at me, just kind of pulling me around the court. So in '92 I made the final. I lost in that final. Cliff played really, really well. We kind of battled back and forth. I don't think anybody took control of the match, and then Cliff ended up just winning. He wanted it more, and I could have won 2 events that year. I mean, I know it's could have, but. So yeah, I felt I was playing really well. I was excited to go back to SMS, and I was, and like you would know, Ellie, not too many people know, is I was starting to question maybe jumping on the tour, because I had a win and I had a 2nd place, and but I did promise my parents, and then when my dad passed away, I owed it to myself and my mom to finish school, and that was a matter of fact, he passed away a month after I got back from the LA tournament. It was just a strange situation. So.
Right.
What year was that, Sweens? What year was?
I think that was 92, the summer of '92, before I went back to SMS.
Yeah, that was one of the things, Ellie always, we talk about offline, how you and I had such an incredible connection, for a week. And we never really spoke about, I mean, you and I did, and we do, and we reference it. But at the same time, I lost one of my best friends, and, something that really connected you and I as doubles players. And I spoke about this the other day in an interview for USA Racquetball. They asked me about doubles, and I said, I've really been lucky to play with some of what I believe are the greatest right side doubles players or forehand doubles players really in the history of the game. And you were that first guy. I mean, before you, Tony Gelso, but we hooked up, and then we played, and then I played with Tim Doyle, and most recently Alex Landa and Rocky Carson. And, but you were like the first guy that I was able to connect with, that I admired, that I respected, and I watched. And Ellie was one of those other guys as a friend that was on tour before. And we hooked up, and we shared that emotional connection. And when we shared that, of the loss of, in your case, your dad, and in my case, Spike, one of my best friends. And we really used that, together, and talk about, and I'm going to let Ellie, because I know one of his favorite topics, he wants to get to Argentina and the Pan Am Games, but, first talk about the national doubles where you and I connected, how we hooked up, and then playing together in Jacksonville, what that was like. And then, that'll segue into what I know Ellie wants to discuss.
Yeah, it was, honestly, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't as good as you guys in doubles. I had to kind of learn doubles. I watched Tim Doyle. I watched some of those right side players, your Brian Hawks, your Obremskis of the world, because I knew that I was probably more suited for the right side. You want Sudsy, and a lot of people don't realize in doubles when, a lot of Suds is going to be taking a lot of the balls in the middle of the court with his forehand. And, the guy on the right just needs to know his role, because, and I learned that my role too, because I'll even say, the year before, Doug Ganem and I played Ellie and Mueller in the finals of the doubles at my favorite court in Arizona. I won 2 NCAA tournaments, and Ellie, soured that court for me. They beat us, and Ellie played phenomenal on the left, and Mueller played phenomenal on the right, and me and Doug were just trying to figure out how to beat him, and it didn't happen. And it was a fun match to play, not for us, but it was fun to watch them execute us the backhanded way. But they played phenomenal, so I congratulate them on that win. And then, and I think Doug might have been, hey, when I'm in the finals, I don't lose, so maybe Tim, you need to find somebody else. So I'm like, hey, Sudsy, how you doing? Before texting, I'm sure I probably set up some bat signals or however I got to you. Maybe I sent you a letter in the mail. I'm like, hey, maybe we should play doubles together. So we started talking. We had this nice connection, and it's funny, when we started this interview, I didn't really know you, and we knew of each other. I knew things how you grew up, and I knew your racquetball lure. I knew everything about that, your lore out there, and so we got to know each other, and then we started playing doubles, and I felt so natural playing with you. And we defined what our roles were, because that's important, communication. And then every match we played, we got better and better, like anything. And the nice thing was, there was such a level of confidence too, that I think that we knew that we wouldn't let each other down. We knew where our goals were. We knew what we're fighting for, because we shared that as a team. It made us play together as one. And we knew that if we were down, that neither one ever lose. There's no way. Even if I'd be like, you take every ball, if you're yours for the rest of the game, go ahead. It doesn't matter. So it was such fun winning that tournament in Jacksonville, the doubles, and there's a lot of good players down there and a lot of good teams. And then obviously taking us to the Pan American Games, which was probably one of the coolest tournaments. The way it came together, in my diary.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get back to the SMS stuff in a little bit, but let's stay on topic here with the Pan Am Games because, I think for me, someone who got to watch you guys play together but never played against you two together, it just wasn't long enough. You guys didn't have a long enough time to be together. So it was almost a little bit of a shame that the Pro Tour wasn't available in a doubles aspect there because that really was entertaining racquetball in the Pan Ams, and you guys had so much power going on there. And, just talk a little bit about that the time in Buenos Aires, not only for 94, which you were there for the 94 trials, which was probably the greatest tournament of all time, the greatest party for sure of all time at the end. Not the greatest. Those were in Chicago, but it was a good one though. It was a really, really good one. And then 95 was different. It wasn't quite as much fun being in the barracks that we were in, but talk a little bit about, that event and winning that event.
Yeah. 95, we were on the that everybody on this call or me and
Ellie, tell everybody real quick what that is right there.
Yeah, that's one of our gold medals from the Pan Am Games. You got the Argentinian colors. There it is. I found it. I tracked it down today somewhere in this house.
I got them. Yeah, I have them too. So we were lucky enough to make the team. Sudsy and I played on the doubles. Ellie played number 1 and Bronfeld played 2 for us, correct?
And then Robinson 3.
And Derek played 3. And I'm so sorry. And on the women's side, I know it was obviously Cheryl was there. I think it was wasn't Robin there? Jackie,
Michelle Gould.
Gould.
Gilman or Gould? Was she Gilman or Gould?
I think she was Gould by then, and I think it was Gould, Cheryl, and Robin as the singles with the Prizo twins as the doubles.
So it was just a great event. So we went down there the year before and kind of did a goodwill thing in 94. So we stayed in a hotel. We played down there. And we had some great matches. There's so many international matches that have been played that nobody's seen because of not the ability to put it on Facebook. And I played Andy Roberts in Hawaii in an international 2-hour match in the outdoor barracks. We're hitting BBs back and forth to each other. I think I won 15-14. He beat me 15-14. The tiebreaker was 15-14. It was one of the best matches nobody's ever seen. And
crazy.
And we were kind of like that in 94, I'm sorry, 94 before we went down there to do the goodwill. So 95, we made the team. We went down there and we stayed in the barracks, like Ellie said. There was some mosquito issues. It was just basically like a huge, just white tile floor. It's like it was very industrial feeling, almost like a hospital. And we had to kind of make it home because, our main objective was like, hey, no matter where we're staying, all this stuff, we got to win, we got to bring home gold. And we battled and we had so much fun. We had great coaching staff, everybody with Coach Winterton and Fran and everybody. Just the way we came together was phenomenal. Suds and I wish it was the level of international play that it is now. And I'm not being mean because we were on a mission. We cut through everybody. I would love to see, because now obviously international is way up there, right? I'd love to compete like that right now in a tournament like that.
Yeah,
it would have been so much fun.
Who'd you guys play in the finals, just so people know?
Jacques Demers and
Chris
Paul
Brumwell.
Schenk,
Chris Brumwell. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the only team. I don't know, Sweens, if you remember this, when we were walking in the opening ceremonies. Ellie, you sent a bunch of pictures today. Maybe Scott can throw some up. Sweens, I don't know if you remember this. You remember USA Today came over to us and asked us who we are, what we do. They didn't know. They were just randomly grabbing U.S. team athletes. And there was 100,000 people in this stadium, if you guys remember that. And USA Today, and I'm full of piss and vinegar. And I'm like, yeah, we play racquetball for Team USA. I go, we're Tim Sweeney from Chicago and Sudsy from New York. We're not going to lose a game and nobody's going to score 10 points. Sweens, you remember? One team got 10 points and they quoted me. So it was a good thing for racquetball because we got into USA Today, but I learned from that. And I was pissed that but that was still, people ask me today too. They're like, hey, what's your greatest win? And they always think I'm going to say the US Open. But, when I talk about Argentina, and it was doubles too, it wasn't It wasn't me, right? It was us. And, and even for us, it was more than that. It was Spike and Dad, and your dad. And it was still to this day, one of those connections. And Ellie, to your point, one of the reasons why we just wanted to win 2 tournaments and retire undefeated. So that's what we decided.
Yeah. And it's a little unfortunate, I think, Tim, and this kind of brings up an interesting question, how do you think racquetball would benefit from having more doubles play compared to the singles on the pro tours now or back then?
I think it'd be great, but wait, before I do that, and don't forget, everybody in '95, Elli won the singles gold medal, came out, just so much fun to watch. And I'm sorry, who'd you play in the final? Did you play Canada or did you play?
No, I played Braunfeld, Sherman in the semis.
And I never, I love Michael Braunfeld. He's a great player. Love that guy. I love probably the quickest hands of some of the guys I ever played, especially up in the front court. And, but I'm so glad that Elli won it. Of course, I'm sad that Bronze lost it. I was hoping you would have beat up a Canadian in the finals, but Elli had a phenomenal.
I didn't care. I love Bronze, but I didn't care. I just wanted Elli to win. He was my boy.
I mean, I'm admitting it now, no matter what, and I'll send Bronze some chocolate or something like that. But it was phenomenal to win. So I think it'd be awesome if because doubles is such a level where, it's and Mr. Ganem always said that. Doug's always pushed it. I think selfishly because he's good at doubles. He's okay at singles, so he'll always play doubles. But I think the balls, you take the athleticism nowadays with the power and the level of play we have, just it's so athletic, and the shots that you can hit and get the ball and create, it's fun to watch. And you know what? And sometimes people get hit. People like seeing that. That's part of the game.
Well, to your point, we have a question from Joey Logan, and then I'm gonna. So Joey Logan in the chat, and Scott, I want Scott to come in too, because I know, Scotty Mack is going to have a question for you too, Sweens. But Joey Logan asks, he says, Sweens, is today's game soft? Yes or no?
The next question. It's not soft, but here's what I'll say. And I'm coming from the stance that I had to qualify. So when I played Cliff, that story, I'll go back to Cliff. I had to qualify. I didn't know where I was going to end up. Or you don't know where you're going to end up. You're going to have somebody in the top 8 first round. So you're going to have to battle. You're going to have to bring out your drive serve a lot sooner. There's a lot more things you're going to have to do to win a tournament. You're going to wake up a lot more sore, and you're going to have a lot more. You're going to stand toe to toe with players, and you're going to have to play nooms. That's going to just dink you and lob you to death. Then you're going to have to stand there, and there's so many different levels of players back then. Nowadays, you don't have the level of play. And I live and die by the drive serve. I'd love to see you guys hitting BBs all the time. I have nothing against the lob serve, obviously, but I think, I think people want to see that. So they're not soft, but the game is not as, when you go to the pro events, they're not as deep, and it's and Kane's just dominating. Rocky's a great player too. I never mentioned Rocky. Rocky's a phenomenal racquetball player. They're not soft. No joke.
So Ellie, I'm gonna take this for a second. So Sween, Scotty Mack is the producer. He came into the sport when he was 14 in 2002, and you were well out of it. So, he hears us talking about you as one of the best ever, and Scott's seen them all. So I know Scott has a question for you that I know everybody wants to definitely hear about again.
Yeah, so I'm curious about like the departure from the sport, and whether you'd do the same thing again. Like if you like, knowing everything you know now, would you still make the same decision?
No way. I would play it for probably 5 years. I would give myself the level to play the game for 5 years, especially the fact that when and shame on me, when I was competing, nobody took the reign as number one. Sudsy was coming up, Elli was banging, Cliff was starting to kind of get back from his tennis days, and Kane was, coming up, starting to play a little bit. So right there was a great gap where I really could I could have really taken a snapshot to see where I was and measure my game. And I think I was there, and I'm very disappointed in my quick decision. I wish I would have kind of played it out a little bit, because a short story, I was kind of mowing the ball around a little bit, probably gained some weight after I got my job. Then I went and played a tournament in Chicago, and Hughes comes in town, who was up and coming, great player. And I beat him in a breaker, but I struggled to do it, a little bit red faced, came off the court, out of shape. And I'm like, all right. And I know Hughes-Ack was mad because I know that.
Why do you think you beat him? Tell me about that. I want to know that. Why did you beat him? He was a great player. He was up and coming. I get what you're saying. I know that role. You were kind of walking away. You weren't really playing. Why were you able to beat a Jack Hughes-Ack in that moment?
I definitely dug down a little bit and knew what I had to do to win. And like I said, I was out of shape too. I was probably carrying around an extra 8 or 10, and I was struggling out there. And he's in phenomenal shape. I just caught him at a good time when he was a little bit younger coming up. But when I had to turn it on, something kind of clicked. Whether I had to use my timeouts or not, I knew what I had to do to kind of stretch it and win that. And it took me, normally I don't care. Anybody knew me when I was playing, let's just go. Let's just hit the ball. I had to kind of slow down and kind of, Winterton taught me that. Take your timeouts, you knucklehead. You skipped the last 3 balls. I'm like, I did? I'm not going to skip the 4th. Well, and I did. So he was like, why don't you go ahead and take a timeout if you do that? I'm like, well, that's all right. I guess that's what I have him for.
Now, Tim, you mentioned before some things that are different about the game now versus when you played. And I'm curious, what would you suggest to improve the game as it is now? What's lacking from today's game, today's players, today's game?
I mean, that's a loaded question because I love what you guys are doing to promote it. I think it's great. I think you have the reach right now on social media to get it out there to people. So that's something that we've struggled with, is just getting it in front of people. So now you have that outlet at a very low cost. Obviously we don't need to get the capital to do that. So I love what Ellie's doing with the grassroots. Everything comes back to grassroots. You got to get people playing the game. One way, you got to put a racket in their hand. We're losing courts. We're losing some in Chicago. So, that's a little bit of some headwind on that. It's stuff like this.
I think he's talking about the players, though, Sweens, right, Scotty?
Yeah,
Scotty Mack, was that?
I'm enjoying. I was enjoying your answer. So
yeah, I know. Go ahead. You want to redefine that question, because I think I know what you meant.
Yeah. I'm curious, what in terms of play style or energy or footwork
players.
In terms of what are the players not doing now that was something that was important for when you were playing?
That's a good question because again, if we go back, you had so many different style players. You just had more volume of players. So when you were playing Obremski compared to a Mike Ray, compared to a Ruben Gonzalez, compared to a Marty Hogan, compared to a Mike Yellen, and when you just go through these names, this is, of course, this is when I was playing. This is before Elli and Suds. So you really had to, tailor your game to them. So, nowadays, and I don't see enough of the early rounds. So I maybe see why, somebody gets waxed by Kane. I think I know the answer to that. But now,
what is the answer?
I think he's that good. But now, will that player come back the next year like I did in Houston? When I circled that on the calendar, is he going to come back saying, I don't care who I get? Am I going to come back after Kane because he pummeled me the year before? I hope that we're seeing progression in the sport to do that. I don't see enough of that. I see, I see the top players playing, and Oscar, he gets so many balls.
Who? You said Oscar. I gotta call you out on that, buddy.
I'm sorry. Help me out.
Yeah, I don't know an Oscar Gonzalez. No, wait, are you talking about a top player today? You talking about so there's Alex Landis ranked 2, Rocky is 3, Alvaro's 4, Conrado Moscoso is from Bolivia, and I know you mentioned you like him.
Watching him play. Yeah.
So just one of those guys. How much of it do you think is mental? I talk a lot about the mental approach, Sweens, and how much how would you coach today's player to go against Kane, right? You see Kane dominate. You see, he is that good. But what would you do, or what would you coach today's player and how to approach him?
Oof. You definitely, like anything, you have to have a plan, and you have to execute it to whatever level you want. And you have to have that going in. If you're going to go in there thinking, I'm just going to see what happens, what's going to happen. So you got to you're going to have to scout that person. You're going to have to watch him play, watch his tendencies, figure out something that you can kind of and it might be something goofy. It might be some weird, half Z to his backhand that he's never seen. It's have a game plan to something that somebody's never seen. I remember when I was at SMS, freshman or sophomore year, I forget, all of a sudden in some weird way, you guys at some party, everybody must be talking about hitting Z serves to my forehand when I was playing in tournaments. So everybody started hitting like half Z lobs to my forehand. I'm like, why would you do that? And all of a sudden I start leaving them up. I'm like, all right, that's why they're doing it. I get it. They're going to use this overconfidence thing. But that must have been something you guys talked about. It's a coincidence. So, have a plan like that you can at least, and you got to be patient, because you know what Kane's going to do? He's going to roll balls. He's going to get you out of the service box. So don't panic. Just stick with your game plan and see if it works like Novocaine. See if it kind of fills in later on and works for you. But you have to have a plan no matter what. Visualization. If you're down, don't ever give up. Just keep on pushing yourself no matter what.
So Tim, some players are like internally motivated, some are externally motivated. What did you find worked for you in terms of like getting motivated?
A lot of internal stuff. That's why I would do kind of the cycling and stuff to kind of make sure that I was at the optimal, health-wise, as far as when I stepped on the court, I was in the ultimate shape. And then I'd work on, hopefully I would translate to my footwork drills related to racquetball, because I knew that my legs and my lungs were going to last with anybody. I can run with anybody. So that was important to me. And then I think I like to think that I had a pretty strong mental game that I would, and usually if you go bottom board, you're going to kind of, no matter what, never give up. You're always going to kind of keep hitting and stay away from the ceiling ball. But the important thing is, no matter what, though, is start maybe raising your target area a little bit so you don't skip if you're going to have to kind of make sure that you're playing from behind. But I like to think, and I learned a lot from Cliff. Cliff had a really good mental game, and kind of watching him play growing up, there's that never give up. And the one thing that I thought too, which at the Last Dance when I saw Jordan, how competitive he was, almost to a fault. You can hear him saying that. When I went down there my freshman year at SMS, I think I was that guy. And I would ask Ellie and some of my teammates down there, because when I went down to SMS, I think I was too competitive, that I really wasn't a good teammate. I think I was more of an individual racquetball player my first year. And I think I learned a lot becoming a teammate my second year and after my dad passed away. I think I kind of softened my blow a little bit. And I'd be really curious to see what Ellie thinks about that.
Yeah, you were such a strong personality, so funny as well, and fun to be around. That yeah, it was interesting. I thought you were a great teammate, Tim, to be really honest. I thought you were the leader of our team in a lot of ways. I thought we had a couple other guys and a couple gals that filled nice leadership roles as well, especially for some of our freshmen that came in. Maybe you weren't the leader of the freshmen. Here's how you do it, guys. You kind of more grabbed us on the wing and said, we're going to go do it. And that was fun, and Captain Al really lived the life with you for those four years, I believe. Yeah. 3 of his years, Alan Ingles.
Billy was awesome too.
Billy was such a unique teammate. But I got down there and having just watched you win Houston and all that, I was just really excited to be able to share some court time with you, and nervous at the same time, because your serve was so photon that it's intimidating. It was something that I'm gonna have to deal with this year. And and so as we got to play each other and all that, it was great. But I just thought you were a fantastic teammate. And everybody on a team, when you're living on the same floor, for a lot of us, sometimes you have to find sometimes you have to find your moments to get away from each other for a second.
Yeah.
And have that. So I think I had that in my mind a little bit as well, like know when to say win with friends here, so you guys don't start getting mad at each other. And I also and I'll tell you this, I locked up with you one time as if I was going to wrestle you or something, and you did 1 second worth of move on my neck. And I don't think I've been right ever since. And you wouldn't remember it because it happened in 1 second. And I said, don't ever lock up with Tim Sweeney again. Don't even think about getting him mad at you and having to deal with it at all. So, you were just such a dynamic athlete that it was a learning process for someone from California to join that squad and be there and learn how to play racquetball and learn how to be on the outside of the court as well with all these great players. But
right.
Talk a little bit about earning your degree. What did you get your degree in from Southwest Missouri State? And those year 3 and 4 for you.
Yeah, one of the coolest things I've ever done, because I promised my parents that I didn't come from a family of going to university. My brother's he's a body man. He's phenomenal with his hands. He's phenomenal working on cars and stuff like that. So for me to get my degree was a goal I set, and I promised my parents. And I got it in communication management. I think Buzz Sawyer got the same thing. I think a lot of us kind of gravitated towards. I'm not sure if that specific discipline, and I used it, today, kind of in the business world where I'm at, and I enjoy it. And I've learned a lot from not only the university, but like, obviously getting into the real world more or less. So, and honestly, it's one of the coolest things I've ever done. One of the biggest honors I've ever done. I've, won some world championships, done some things in racquetball, but for racquetball, that blue ball / green ball to get me through college is just the coolest thing ever.
On that same note, let me ask this, what's your two different wins? What's your greatest win as a singles player and your favorite, and also your favorite win? And those might not be the same. Maybe they are the same.
Yeah, it's tough. And there's a lot of 1A and 1B. Winning the pro stop in Chicago in front of everybody, there's nothing better than that, because you always want to win at the highest that you compete at. You always want to win the pro stop. And I have the draw sheet when Marty Hogan's name's in it, when Yellen's in it, when guys that Cliff Swain's in it, that's something you're proud of. And even to this day, I don't care what year it says. It was good. It was way before Google. I don't care. So that's probably my best win. My greatest win is winning all 4 intercollegiate championships, because I promised myself I'd do it. I promised the university. I promised my parents. So that's a goal that I want. It's so lumped into one.
I'm going to test your memory here.
What's
I'm
that?
going to test your memory. Can you tell us who you played in the finals of all those collegiate title matches there, from the first one to the fourth one?
Jimmy Floyd, freshman year. Sophomore year, I do believe sophomore year was Joel Bonnet. Or sophomore year was Chris Cole. Junior year was Joel Bonnet. Senior year was, I do not know.
Close.
Yeah.
3 for 4, 75% there.
Do you remember your losses more than your wins? You like, how about a loss what's the worst loss you remember?
I remember the tough losses. My worst loss ever was when I lost in the World Championships in Montreal to Chris Cole. He outplayed me.
No offense, great player. How does a guy
Great
like
player.
that beat you? Like with your tools and weapons, it's what, Ellie and Jason's definitely a totally different level than Chris Cole, and Chris Cole's a great player. But from a fan standpoint, and Scotty Max watching, Chris Cole was like a finesse player and control player, and Sweens was just a constant bombardment of what you see today.
I love how like finesse and control, you're just like, he's just like a finesse and control player.
It's like athletically, if you saw the two of them warming up, you would right, Sweens? I mean, Jason went through that a little bit too, warming up with John or me or Kane or Cliff, and he's beat us all. How does Chris Cole, a guy like that, beat a guy like Tim Sweeney?
In that event, I'll blame that on Doug Ganem, because we played this club in Montreal. It was a phenomenal club with a sidewall glass, and the courts around it were phenomenal. They were fast. They were great courts, but the glass court was so slow. So we get out there the first day and we're hitting balls, me and Ganem, and he's on the backhand side, of course, because he hogs the backhand side, because he doesn't, that's all he does. He can only hit a cut forehand. So he's hitting balls and I'm hitting balls on the right side. And I'm like, God, these courts are a little spongy. And all of a sudden I stop. He looks over at me, goes, these are the slowest courts in the world. He goes, this is Chris Cole's tournament all day long.
Oh, God.
So I haven't talked to him since.
Time out, Sweens. For the record, Chris Cole is a great racquetball player.
100%.
He's a fantastic. So go ahead. I'm not taking away from him.
Oh, and me either. And yeah, he played phenomenal. So I haven't talked to Doug since he said that. So if you guys talk to him,
yeah,
I didn't say hi.
Yeah,
I know that.
I think that's a good question though, Sudsy. I think it's bigger than that, because Cole was going through a moment there, 92, 93, 91, 92, where he was playing some top level ball too. He won 92 after you had won 91 in Houston. So, he wins he also either won or took second at the Olympic Festival in Minneapolis as well, somewhere around there. So he was a good player, but he wasn't a Jason Menino. Jason Menino is one of the greatest of all time, and his diving ability, Chris didn't have any of that. He had game plan. And so that was the big thing he had going for him, was he had game plan, and he executed really well when he was on, and he was tough to beat. He wasn't a pro style player. 3 out of 5 wasn't going to be his forte. It was going to be the 2 out of 3 lob Nick. But for someone like, that's an interesting story, because Ganem's your boy right there. You guys have known each other for a long time, and he throws that out there. Do you think he had any idea what he was saying there? I mean, that's
Dougie Fresh, Ellie. I mean, Sweens and him are very close. Like,
I know
that's
they are.
typical
I know they are.
That's kind of a motivating.
He said that the first day. So the results, that's the way it happened. So I mean, he said it the first day. He's like, oh my God, these. So that he's the.
Hey, Scotty Max got a question for you, Sweens. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a question from Cheryl. Do you have any?
Cheryl Godinez, who will be on next week.
Yep. Do you have any lingering effects from the Achilles tear suffered while playing squash?
Not too much. Hey, Cheryl. Yeah, I'm going to listen next week when you're on. Can't wait for that as well. No, not that much because I'm playing golf. And that's part of the reason I cycle a lot. I'm not a big runner. I have played a little bit of squash. I'm sad to say that there's no squash courts in the northwest side of suburbs of Chicago. You got to go downtown, or there's like one spot. So I can't really play squash right now. No, pretty good right now. It's probably about 90%, but I shot 75 today, so it's okay. It recovered.
Yeah, and I got the text and I did see the card. He was the best out of about what, 24 guys? How many guys were there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, 75, not bad. So Sweens, I got to ask you, because we got to stay a little bit racquetball here. You know, what do you miss? What do you love? What do you like? Talk to everybody about what racquetball did for Tim Sweeney in life, and what you really miss about it, and you know, just kind of the effects it had on you.
But the coolest thing was it just got me, for one, it got me so many friends that are lifelong friends. Of course, the sport brings everybody together. Friends that locally, Dave Negretti, Eugene Coyle. I mean, how do you say stuff about guys that are your buddies? That was you know, pallbearer in your mom's funeral. Guys that will always be around. As far as racquetball in general, I miss competing. Of course, I think I'm getting a little bit out of the golf. It's not the same. You're not really kind of like, you're not hitting BBs back and forth to each other. You're not standing there. So golf's a lot different to compete because you're kind of more competing against yourself and not somebody else, maybe the course. But I miss that high level of competing. I played some softball, goofing around after college and stuff, but nothing fed that, what you needed to do to go out there and hit a ball 160 and do stuff like that. There's nothing better. Move your feet. I do miss that 100%. And especially the fact that I saw that SMS stuff kind of revisited, and it just, all the teammates and hanging out with everybody, it brought me back. It was just, I miss that, you know?
Jen Sheldon says, sorry, Ellie, or as soon as Jen Sheldon says, Sweens, you're too hard on yourself. You were a great teammate. So go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah, you know, and I was going to bring up another teammate because a lot of that video that you saw there was courtesy of Mike Engelmeyer, who was, you know, one of the leaders of the program as well. Maybe not from the court aspect of it, but from the social aspect of it, and just being a good person in general. And did you know that this would come back and some of this video would be here 25 years later, 30 years later, from Mike's camera back then?
And to take everybody through it, Mike Engelmeyer, it was in, if anybody saw the 5-part series for SMS, he was the one carrying around a camera the whole time and one of those old school cameras. You guys don't even know him. You're gonna have to Google it to see it, where you put it on your shoulder. And he broke it. He broke his foot or tore his Achilles. So he was on a cast, just videoing us like crazy. And all of a sudden, to kind of look back at this, because I think part of the reason that story was so phenomenal is because of Mike Engelmeyer. The footage to cover the specifics of the story were dead on. I mean, everything about it, the framework of what Chad, the reporter, was talking about, he had footage to say exactly that. Here's newcomer John Ellis on the cover of a magazine, and here's newcomer John Ellis doing all this stuff, and here's Alan Engel, and there's a lot of players that weren't mentioned enough, and I feel bad. Like Buzz Sawyer wasn't. You didn't hear too much of it. And Mark Isley, who was part of the reason I probably wouldn't go to SMS if it wasn't for Mark Isley. And there's so many guys that we played with that that should be mentioned that I do feel bad that they were not. But I think we tried to track some of them down on Facebook. We just couldn't find them.
Yeah, Isley, I speak to him every now and then. He's a great dude and he's doing well. He's big in cornhole now. So, but I think I did see him, run across the line here. We have Scott Oliver has a question. That's John Ellis's boy. We got to get wrapping up here shortly, but Scott Oliver, can't leave him out. One of the greats of our game too. He says, Tim Sweeney, what is your number in golf? Meaning handicap. We know that. And great interview. He enjoyed the interview. So Scotty Oliver, and I know that's a competitive question. He wants to know what your handicap is.
So Scott's kind of baiting me. I get it. Cause I see pictures on Facebook where he's always like, hey, what golf course is this? And it looked like really nice golf courses. So I'm a 2 handicap, but I just joined a country club that's a little bit tough. And my handicap went up to a 3.8. So I was a 2.1. I'm up and it's a very tough course. So Scott, when you're in Chicago, look me up. We'll go play some golf. I'll take you out to my course. We'll figure it out. There's tons of great courses in Chicago. And I'll do the same if I'm in California. But if you're in Chicago, please.
I'm all about it.
Ellie, we're gonna let you finish this up. But I want to say before we finish this up, Sweens, I know the answer to this. Are you in the Racquetball Hall of Fame?
I am in the Illinois Hall of Fame. I'm not in the Sudsy USA Hall of Fame. That's so, is that something that?
So, so for me, and Ellie and I have not spoken about this. I believe you belong in the USA Racquetball Hall of Fame. And, we talk about it, and Ellie belongs there as well. And Ellie says he wants to go in as a professional. I believe that he can go in as either. For me, you clearly belong there as a USA amateur, racquetball player, and you belong there one day. And I just wanted to say that out loud. I don't think I ever said that. And Ellie, I know that's the first time you hear me saying that. So Tim Sweeney, you belong in the USA Racquetball Hall of Fame. And if I have any say in it or a vote, I don't know, maybe I do because I'm in there. You're going to be voted in as a, USA Racquetball player. When I think of racquetball, I think of one of the greatest ever. And thank you for that. And Ellie, I'm going to let you finish this off and get us out of here.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer, Swains. Obviously, as a USA Racquetball amateur player, I mean, you're maybe should be the next person in, or right there with a bunch of guys that have that kind of career already. But my big, I'm curious, what do you think racquetball here in the United States needs to do in the next 20 years to sustain and hopefully grow a little bit? How do we stop these courts from going away? What are the things that you see from where you're at right now for our great sport?
Yeah, that's a tough way to finish. Again, I'll go back to what I said. I appreciate what you're doing, Ellie, and really pushing the grassroots. And your son plays, and I'm a hypocrite. My son doesn't. He plays hockey. He plays a little bit of golf. I got him on the racquetball court. He didn't fall in love with it. I pushed him a little bit. Don't want to shove him. He's a pretty good athlete. I'd like to see him play. So I feel bad I'm not feeding that. I think that's an important piece. Of course, that's going to be the volume of the grassroots. We know that. But to get it to that next level, we have to really focus on where there are courts. And I do believe you do that. I think you're playing some pickleball and focus around those areas so that we don't lose them. We need to go into kind of save mode right now. We're not in growth mode. So we need to kind of save first and let's grow incrementally after that. Lifetime, I think, and some of those other clubs gave us a gift that they did put racquetball courts in some of those. And I think they're filling them up with weights and stuff. We need to get activity going on those courts. And otherwise, we can't make them disappear. It's a great sport. It needs some good CPR. And you know what? It's very cyclical. Pickleball was nothing, many years ago. It was zero. And all of a sudden, look what it does now. Let's hope that happens again with racquetball. But it can only happen if we have the courts.
Yeah, I believe that. Will we see you again at some racquetball events in the future? When we get back to tournament play, will we see you again playing events, maybe doubles with Doug again?
I was always planning on going down to whatever happens with the Open with Doug, and I hope something happens because it's his last one. I owe that to Doug. He's one of the coolest guys. So I definitely will be back at another event no matter what, just to at least say aloha, hello and goodbye to some people and whatever. But got myself a little bit better shape. I'm going to go hit the ball around a little bit, see what happens, especially in the winters in Chicago. I need to do something.
Yeah,
there's no doubt you'll be hitting missiles all over the place, Sween. So yeah, that'd be fun. Hey, we can run it back again if you want. We can find a division to smack it around in. Ellie, if nothing else, we could go on and on, Sween.
Yeah, it's tough with Tim, right? I mean, I feel like I don't want this call to end because, we haven't had this moment for a while and, it's, don't want it to come to an end.
I have one closing question too.
Please, Scott.
I'm curious what it's been like to be on this call. Like, what's it like talking about this stuff?
It's great to revisit anything with racquetball. Obviously it's kind of nice to revisit your career. I got a really nice, that story at the SMS thing was just, for me, it was awesome. The way he framed that and told the story, it was great because not for me. I mean, I just happened to be on that team, for all the teammates and everything and how we came out of that. So that was a nice B12 shot for me. And then I've always stayed in touch with Suds and Elli and some of the core guys, Cliff once in a while, Jerry Price. And it's always good to talk to those guys because they're friends for life. No matter if you talk once a month or you talk every 6 months, it doesn't matter. And it's great to see him again. I see, I don't know why Sudsy's not playing. He's in phenomenal shape, hits the ball like no other. He should be playing. So that's, when I get on the other side of the microphone, I'll ask those questions because
you're on that side.
So why not? I mean, instant number 4, just add tournaments.
Yeah, that's interesting, and at some point, Tim, there's going to be that type of Sudsy interview and maybe maybe that we can turn around on him and you and I can
Yeah.
take on that one with Scotty Mack in the background. Because
We got
that'll be a lot of
5
fun.
minutes. I'll sum it up real quick for you guys.
No, I mean, this is, like I was saying, it's really tough to get off of this call because, like times of the past, you want to just kind of stay in that moment here. And it's tough. It's tough because it's going to come to an end here a little bit. So, Tim, personally, you've just been a really big inspiration for myself, especially in those 90, 91 years. What you might not know is when I was recruited to go to Southwest Missouri State in the fall of 91, the video is what did it for me. Seeing some of that video that you guys put together that had the music behind it that Engelmeyer did, that did it. That was it. I was done. And seeing you as one of the main guys on that, and just that energy and the togetherness that was there, I wanted to experience that, even if it meant traveling to a foreign land like that. So I appreciate you a lot, bud.
Oh, I'm glad you went. That was huge. Yeah, taking you to the Midwest, taking Big Al to the Midwest. I'm so glad you guys went. Fast friends. I mean, it would have been me, you, and Big Al probably in some house if you would have stayed on for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe us three here can get together and go down and do some fishing with Big Al one of these days. Bring our families and have some really great times in the future. I look forward to that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Sweens, I know you got to get to a party tonight, and Ellie said a lot, and I know we have so much more to say. It's kind of like leaving a date that we don't want to leave, and we want it to continue. And and we will, and we'll stay in touch as always. But a little bit like what Ellie said, what you may not know is, when we played doubles together, you were a huge inspiration and a big motivation in my career. And Ellie says, maybe to a fault, I don't talk openly highly enough about players a lot, and it doesn't mean I don't respect plenty, but there's only a few that have really played a big role in what I became in the sport, and you played a role in that, and Ellie too, and Cliff. I always say, Cliff Swain made me better. There's no way I would have been who I am without Cliff. And but from an early stage, you taught me a lot of things, whether you know it or not, whether we talked about it or not. And I appreciate that, and I love you as a friend and as a doubles partner. It's great that we could always go back and look at that, and nobody can ever take that away from us. A great friend. And Ellie, this goes for you and anybody watching. There's an uncle, a family member of mine that had a lot taken away from him in life, and one thing he said to me, and it stood out. He said, they can take away everything, but there's one thing they can never take away, and that's a way that they can never take away our memories. And Sweens, you're embedded in mine, and I appreciate that. And we can go on and get emotional, but we're going to let you go. You have a party to get to. And for all of you that don't know, do as much research as you can. Tim Sweeney is one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And not just talent wise, but just his personality and who he was and what he brought. And he really molded the way to a lot of the way what you guys are playing today. I heard LeBron James say, they were talking about the GOAT, and somebody said something about Kobe, and LeBron said, or Kobe said about Michael, I'm not who I am without them. And guys like Tim Sweeney, are why you see the players that we are today or were, whether it's me or Kane Wazelenchuk or John Ellis. Tim Sweeney played a role in that. So Sweens, thank you so much. We're going to let you go. I'm sure we'll text in about 30 seconds, but Scott's going to kick you out. And then the three of us are just going to kind of recap. So thank you. And we will see you soon.
Great to meet you, Tim.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Good talking, buddy.
Later, Sweens.
Love you guys.
Love you too, buddy. So Scotty Mack, that's Tim Sweeney. Ellie, that was fun. I mean, like you said, we were going an hour and 25, and I know Scotty Mack would have gave us the light and said, guys, let's go, chop. People lose attention, but it's important for people to see guys like Tim Sweeney. Don't you think, Ellie?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the era of younger players right now. If we're interviewing him for the first episode of Beyond the Court, that must say a lot right there. And he was our clear-cut number one choice for this. We have that experience from 95. Obviously, we have those couple of days after in South Beach, Miami, that really solidified that win for us. So Tim's a big part of both of our games at crucial times in our games and our lives. So it was a great interview, and I'm happy that it'll be now recorded for everyone to go back and listen to. If you don't have to listen to it all at once, if you don't want to, but there's a lot of fun information from one of the great players, Tim Sweeney.
What'd you take from that, Scotty Mac? Like, what, you're not familiar with that. And, you
Yeah.
know these guys today. Like, what do you take away from that?
Yeah, what I took the most and how I related it most to my experience was around like the internal motivation that he was speaking to, of like I that's sort of how I treat it. It's like I'm not playing for accolades. I'm playing like to figure the game out, and playing to learn things, and playing to just to like to be smarter on the court. Just for itself. So I was kind of struck by that, and I was kind of like leaving with the question of like, I'm curious how many like racquetball players versus other sports are internally motivated, like, and just how common that is like at the higher levels.
That's a great point. I'll speak for myself, and Ellie, I'd love to hear you. We'll stay on a couple more minutes here. One of the biggest differences, and people talk about it all the time, and it's hard for Ellie and I, Scott, to talk about racquetball when we played, at the highest level, and playing today, because of course people will say you're short-sighted, or you see the sport in your era or not, but Ellie and I, we've played everybody today. We've played Kane, we've played Rocky, we played Alvaro, we played all these guys. Me now recently being on the court with all these guys, and one of the things I see different is the players today are amazing, but you touched on it right there, Scotty Mac. We were so self-motivated and driven, and like we had an internal drive that we just wanted to compete and be better. Like we were sizing each other up before it even started. Sweeney's Elli touched on this, and you and I have joked about this too. Sweeney said when he was playing Cliff Swain in that huge match in a pro stop in his hometown, like all of a sudden, instantly, Cliff's in his car, he's his buddy. And he's like, oh, I got to go. I got to drop you off. And, that's kind of what I feel sometimes we miss, not just in racquetball. I just feel today with social media and, the way that the world is, there's more of that, let's be buddies. And then, oh, by the way, let's go play a match or let's go compete. And I'm not taking away. I'm not saying you can compete and be friends, because Ellie and I were, and Cliff and I were, or Jason and Cliff were. But in that moment, you couldn't tell, boy. You thought we hated each other's guts. And Sweeney definitely was from that mold, Ellie. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. All that. And I'll touch on another angle as well. I mean, Tim's a great athlete. Tim could play a lot of sports, still can. You're hearing that with the golf now, but he could play everything. And I think a lot of guys from the era before us, and then during our era and just slightly after, with guys like Rocky, Hughes, Kane, you got guys who play a lot of different sports. And then when you get into this individual sport, the difference between the team sport to the individual sport, mentally, physically, it's big. And so self-motivating goes both ways on that. But there's a lot of competitive juices and vibes that you can get from team sports that roll over into individual sports. Also, another thing is Tim Sweeney probably started with smaller rackets. And as the rackets got longer to the 22 inches, his power source started getting greater and greater. And for him, we heard it's a 6-year process from beginner. Maybe his beginner is like a B level right off the bat, but beginner to on the national team, one of the great players in the world, literally. That's crazy. 6 years of that. And a lot of it has to do with the transition to powerful rackets as well. And him just being able to explode in the balls, which then takes you back to other sports. Because the biggest thing about Tim Sweeney that you had to fear is he was going to Mach 9 some drive serves around you, and you were going to give him weak returns. And then he was going to roll a ball out or Mach 9 at a passing shot by you. And you're going to have to deal with that type of power from a guy who was 5'8", not huge muscles, very strong, put together, wrestler strong. But so, I see that. And I think in the last 15 years, you've got a lot of US players here that are just racquetball players that aren't a lot of team sports growing up. And so, you can stale out real quick. You cannot have a lot of diversity in your footwork and everything that can make you a great champion player. And I'm not sure what's going on in Latin America with all that, because you do have a lot of great players come from there. So, I wonder what the correlation will be, but Tim Sweeney is one of the great athletes that's ever played the game. And you got guys like Kane and Rocky who are just from that mold too.
One more question, Ellie, before we wrap it up. You take Tim Sweeney today and you take him at his best and you put him into the group of tour players today. Where does he fit?
Well, as a one match prospect, he's number 2 on that list for me. That high. And that sounds crazy, right? He's, if
no,
you just
not
put
to
him
me,
in,
it doesn't.
right.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't to us, but to the people listening out there, like, come on, John, but that's how we're starting to look at this. You've kind of brought me to this idea of one match at the best level they can play. I only have Kane in front of him. Like, Alvaro and Rocky and De La Rosa and Londa, great players, obviously great players at their, at their times and beyond their moments. But Tim Sweeney's drive serve separates him just slightly from those guys for me. And I would put him at 2 and not, obviously not there with Kane.
All right, well, we're going to get out of here, but I need to confirm something. So we have an official goodbye for the first. Scotty Mac, as producer of this show, are we going with episode 1? Is that what it is?
I think episode's good. Yeah, we were
Okay.
debating. Yeah, let's call it episode 1.
All right, Scotty
I
Mac
like
keeps
chapter
me-
still, but yeah, let's go. with
Scotty Mac
episode.
keeps Ellie and I in check. So with that, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Next week, we have the great Cheryl Godinez on the show, and she'll be on July 10th. And it's super important. And Ellie and I and Scotty discussed this because July 15th, we're going to be live with Doug Ganem, who's going to give his announcement, obviously with USA Racquetball, whether or not the US Open will happen this year. So next week, same time, Cheryl Godinez. With that, everybody, thank you so much. We love doing this. Ellie and I are doing everything we can. Scotty Mac is doing everything he can to continue the energy, to keep the flow going. Ellie, do you have something you want to?
No, just a reminder, 4th of July coming up tomorrow. Interesting times here in the United States, but there's nothing like wearing the USA across your back to play tournament matches. So, and we'll always have that feeling of country pride because of those moments, because of the love of the land and the country that we live in here, and wanting everything to be as great as possible. So everybody, whether your 4th of July is canceled in your home city or not, celebrate it with the most positive thoughts in mind, not the negatives, and just be better people as much as possible.
You know what? That's a great, I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if Momo is going to like this from Formula Flow, but whoever else is paying attention at this moment, message me privately for a discount, and I'll make sure you get a discount on anything you buy, and from my signature series tomorrow for 4th of July. So yeah, Ellie, thank you so much. So again, thank you from Sudsy and Elli, Beyond the Court with Scotty Mac, episode number 1, Tim Sweeney. That was fantastic. We love you guys, and never forget, we are Racquetball. Good night.
See y'all.